Hello, beautiful seekers and fellow heretics. Welcome back to Idea Check, where we take an analytical lens to mysticism and spirituality. Today, we are talking about mirroring, and mirroring is one of the ways in which that thing talks back. Okay, I call it that thing. We could just as well call it God, the universe, source energy, spirit, the absolute, the field, pure consciousness, call it whatever. I call it that thing because it's just as ambiguous as that thing is. And the thing about that thing is that it is always trying to guide us to the opportunities that will give us growth and healing and expansion in our life, ultimately leading us back to the state of wholeness that we all came from. But that is idea sex for another time. Today, I just want to talk about the ways in which God talks back, and specifically one way called mirroring. So what is mirroring? Mirroring is when our internal world is reflected in our external circumstances, and specifically when ideas and beliefs that are sort of buried in our subconscious play out around us in some way. It may be exhibited in the people around us. It may transpire as events in our lives. And there are two primary ways to identify mirroring. The first is projecting. And projecting is when we have some piece of ourselves that we have denied or rejected. It's a piece of ourselves that we don't really like, so we hide it away. And then when we see it in other people, it triggers the shit out of us. And so often when we judge something in another person, it's because it's something that bothers us in ourselves. In psychology, we call this projecting. The second way to identify mirroring is to identify patterns and cycles in our lives. A lot of us at some point in our lives realize that we're caught in a cycle. We're like, why the does this keep happening to me again and again? It's often mirroring. So on the note of projecting, the classic example is the homophobe, someone who irrationally hates gay people because they're secretly gay and they just can't stand that about themselves. And so trigger warning, hate crime, skip like 15 seconds ahead if you don't want to hear this, but there was a murder that took place in my city where a man stabbed a younger man to death for being gay. This happened right after the murderer had tried to hook up with the younger, openly gay man. So prime example of projecting, and that's obviously an extreme example. Projecting gets worse and worse the more we hate that piece of ourselves that we don't want to exist, and the more we push it onto other people. Most of us aren't going to do something so heinous, but that's an extreme example. The other method is to look for patterns or recurring themes in our lives. And I'm actually going to use an example that I saw on TikTok this morning. I'm not on TikTok. I'm too old for that, obviously. But sometimes that stuff makes its way onto YouTube. And in this video, this poor man was talking about what makes a good person. How to identify a good person is what he said. 1, they never buy themselves anything. They never spend money on themselves. 2, second quality or sign of a good person is that they never ask for help. 3, they attract liars and cheats and people who take advantage of them. And I was watching this like, no. That is not symptomatic of a good person. That is symptomatic of a person who does not respect themselves and who does not love themselves. And so this is another classic example is when someone attracts a lot of people to them that are frankly people, and they're not necessarily a person, right? But they attract liars and cheats and people who take advantage of them. It's because they often lack self-love or self-respect. And so they don't have the boundaries that an emotionally healthy person would, that would keep out heads. Another example of being caught in a pattern or a cycle might be a person who feels glossed over in life. Maybe, vocationally, platonically, romantically, whatever. They feel as though other people don't see their value. And this can be mirroring back one of several things. Depends on the person. And it's always going to be up to you, the person that it is happening to figure out where this is coming from. So in that instance, it could be that a person does not see the value in themselves. They don't acknowledge their own value. It could be that they don't see themselves, or it could be that they don't want to be seen. In any case, mirroring is ultimately a tool for healing. It's a way that the universe helps us become conscious of the things that we're doing that are not serving us or the people around us. Jung has a quote that I love, which is, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will control our lives and we will call it fate. In order to heal, we have to make the unconscious conscious, and that is much easier said than done because it's all the pieces of ourselves that we don't necessarily want to look at. Mirroring, then, is a function by which we become aware of limiting beliefs, unconscious programming, the reasons why we get stuck in the same unwanted patterns and cycles, our hidden darkness and our dimmed light. So again, mirroring is a tool that the universe uses to help us become more conscious of the things we are unconscious of. And this is in order to help us heal. And in order to drive this point home, I will share an amusing anecdote from my own life that really helped all of this crystallize for me. The worst job I ever had was in a 20-foot square room with 2 other underlings. And it was at a time when I was kind of at rock bottom in my life. I had just lost an apartment, a boyfriend, an amazing remote job that I loved, and I was forced to take this really job writing emails from a shoebox of an office for a little while. And I was at the early stages of my own spiritual awakening. And honestly, I was kind of weirded out by this. Some people have their awakenings and they're like really excited and, oh, it's so cool, like God talks back. And for me, I was like, how can any of this be real? Like the synchronicities and the random angel numbers, right? The repeating number sequences and the dreams and the intuitions. It honestly just made me uncomfortable. And I was probably one of the most reluctant awakenees ever. I was like, I don't want this. Let me be asleep. Sleepy the fucking dwarf. And so at this time in my life, I started to get this really this feeling that I could not shake, that something was communicating with me, right? Through the meaningful coincidences we call synchronicities, through the symbolism of repeating number sequences, through my dreams and intuitions, and even through the events and personalities that I encountered in my day-to-day life. And this was the one that was the hardest for me to wrap my head around, because we are conditioned to believe that everything that happens around us is random, right? There's no sense to the events that happen or to the people that walk into our lives. But when we wake up, a lot of us start to come to the conclusion that none of this is accidental and none of this is random. It seems like it because on the surface, life is like one big cluster, but underneath the chaos and the crazy, or the chaos and the crazy, it's all perhaps orchestrated. We can't really wrap our tiny human brains around this, but it would seem to a lot of us that underneath all of the crazy, there is a kind of divine and sublime order. Can we prove that definitively? No, not as far as I know, but at the very least, it's an idea hat that we can try on and see if it serves us. Can this mindset help us orient ourselves in a way that has a positive impact on our lives? Because then it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter whether or not it's true, if it has a net positive effect. It's worthwhile, even if it is untrue woo. So, this terrible job I had, the people who ran the business were cutthroat and dishonest. And then the 2 people that I shared an office space with, this little closet of an office, didn't believe in themselves at all. They were both in their 40s and working way under where they could have been in life. And the first one was the sassy gay office admin who I loved. He was such a sweetheart, and we would talk about papillons and nerd culture. And the other man was this crusty, bitter developer who had a weird habit of fitting the word self-preservation into literally every conversation. It was very bizarre. And I noticed these things about people, and I was like, I wonder what mindset would lead someone to have the word self-preservation be like a staple in their vocabulary. A red flag indeed, but we'll get to that. There was something surreal about being stuck in an office with these 2 characters. I literally felt like I was trapped in a shoebox with 2 pieces of my own psyche, and it took me a few months to figure out why. Let's start with the admin dude. The admin was a very smart, capable man, and somehow he'd gotten stuck working as a glorified paper pusher for like 15 years. My dude was definitely a bottom, okay, because he was very compliant with the icky people who issued our paychecks, and he kind of just let people walk on him. And I thought to myself, like, that is a smart, capable person who gave up on any career dreams they ever had. Like, he has not led his life. He's just allowed life to happen to him, and it comes from a place of living in fear. Then I looked over to the coding crustacean, always in the corner in a Billabong hoodie. I remember it clearly, and his Billabong hoodie like huddled into this little ball of hate, his little crab eyes on either side of his head, always scanning for a threat while muttering about self-preservation. Everything that came out of this man's mouth was so cynical and suspicious. And it wasn't surprising in the least to find out that he was the kind of person who would throw anyone under a bus, including his own daughter, when things went wrong. And I thought to myself, I was like, that is a person who does not trust anything, least of all a higher power. And so he feels like the world is out to get him, to destroy him, and it comes from living in fear. And I realized that everything that bothered me about these two people bothered me about myself. Like, if I didn't change, I was going to end up like them. If I didn't learn to believe in myself, I was going to end up like that office admin with a boring job way beneath my potential and spending my entire life settling for less than I actually deserved. 2, I did not trust anything, least of all God. And I was afraid for my survival on a regular basis. If I continued on like that, I would end up like the crusty coder and become the kind of person who scapegoated onto everyone else because I was so afraid. And let me elaborate on that second point a little bit. So my spiritual awakening was triggered by an out-of-body experience at a meditation camp in Thailand. And it scared the shit out of me because I didn't believe in any of this. I spent the next 2 years in and out of doctors' offices and hospitals, very much not sure what was going on with my body. I thought I was dying. I had all these strange, undiagnosable illnesses, and as a result, I didn't trust anyone. I didn't trust doctors to help me. I didn't trust my family to understand me, and I didn't trust my own body to be okay. Like Krusty, I was deeply suspicious of the universe and everything in it. I had come to the conclusion, I had this subconscious belief that life is nothing but a survival game, and I was losing. And it was only seeing that belief play out in someone else in a more dramatic way, in Krusty, the coder, that made me conscious that I had that belief at all. And when I looked at Krusty the coder and the adorable admin, I realized that these two people were who I would become if I didn't change the trajectory I was on. I was on a path to become a person whose life was ruled by fear. I would never see a dream come to fruition. I would be afraid of the world and believe that everyone and everything in it was out to hurt me. And if I let fear determine the course of my life, I was never going to fulfill my potential. In fact, I wouldn't really be alive at all. The other thing that was being mirrored back to me was a cycle that I had been caught in for my entire life. My relationship with my employers was just as one-sided and degrading as the relationship I had just gotten out of. They were very dishonest in the way they did business. Their employees were pawns that they used. They were disrespectful. And I realized the flavor of that dynamic was something I was well acquainted with. It was something that had colored so many of my relationships up to that point, vocationally, romantically, platonically. It finally dawned on me that the reason I found myself caught in this cycle again and again is because I didn't believe I deserved to be treated any better. I did not respect my damn self. And then I saw so clearly who I was on a path to becoming, this person full of dead dreams with a crab shell to protect them from a universe that they didn't like or trust, all while being treated poorly because I didn't treat myself well. It made me hyper-conscious of my own fears, that I would never find meaningful remote flex time work again, that spirits was fundamentally unfriendly, which is why all the stability in my life had just crumbled to pieces. And it took sitting in a room with those two people, and having that fear mirrored back to me to realize that such a mindset would never get me to where I wanted to go. If I kept on going the way I was going to end up like them, and it was a trap. That's when something weird started to happen as I realized how far out of alignment I was with my own soul and where I wanted to go in life. I started to self-sabotage, and I have never done anything like this in my life, not before and not since. I went from passing my 3-month review with flying colors, confetti, sparkles everywhere, to doing literally everything wrong. Like, I spilled coffee on their laptop and destroyed it. Whenever I left the facility, I would drive off with like my purse on top of my car, or like my water bottle. It would just go flying across the parking lot. And then it started to happen with their work phone. Like, I kept losing it. And then one day I left it on top of the car and I drove off and it was gone forever. And eventually, I think the proverbial straw was when I mass sent an email to the wrong people with a bunch of typos. I don't do like this ever. Like, I'm a very conscientious person. And it was bizarre, and I felt like I had no control over what the fuck I was doing. And so it came as no surprise that they terminated my position, especially when I accused them of lying to their customers, because they were. I didn't accuse them. I called them out on things that everyone else knew they were doing. And they fired me. And I was so giddy. I was actually smiling, like genuinely smiling at them when it happened because I was so grateful. I was like, literally anything is better than walking the path I'm currently on. And as a result of having some of my deepest wounds mirrored back to me, I was able to change those things. I was able to tweak the dials and do some rewiring and eventually create a life that I'm a little bit proud of. And that is the functioning of mirroring. It's happening to all of us all of the time. And if we can be brave enough to face the things that God is trying to bring to our attention, it can radically and positively transform our lives. I hope that was helpful to anyone interested in understanding more about mirroring. If you enjoy kind of anecdotal spiritual stories like this, I have 2 related ones. So after I lost this job, I entered a bodybuilding competition to rebuild my belief in myself video there, and then I also manifested a series of dream jobs video there. In any case, thank you so much for having idea sex with me today, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Hail to the power and the sight, and until next time, I hope you stay very, very blessed.